The afternoon sunlight streamed into the kitchen, but for Max, the world had suddenly turned cold. He stood frozen in the center of the room, his eyes fixed on the floor. Where a magnificent castle once stood, there was now only a chaotic graveyard of plastic bricks. Blocks were scattered everywhere, reaching from the stove to the refrigerator. His masterpiece, his pride, lay in total ruins. Just a few inches away stood his younger brother, Leo. Leo's small hand gripped the final red piece, the very peak of the tower, like a trophy. Max could feel the silence in the room vibrating. A spark of heat started in his chest and climbed rapidly to his cheeks. His face grew hot, turning a deep shade of crimson that matched the block in Leo's hand. The betrayal felt heavy, and the quiet of the kitchen was about to break. The heat inside him boiled over. Max couldn't hold it back anymore. He lifted his right foot and brought it down with a thunderous crash. Then the left. Stomp! Stomp! The old wooden floorboards creaked and groaned under his weight, echoing his internal storm. He needed to release the pressure. He lunged for his favorite pillow on the sofa, gripped it tight, and flung it with all his might against the kitchen wall. It hit with a soft, hollow thud before sliding helplessly down to the rug, but it wasn't enough. He opened his mouth wide, his chest heaving, and let out a long, primal roar that seemed to shake the very walls. It was a sound of pure, unbridled frustration, a scream that filled every corner of the house, announcing his anger to the world. He stood there trembling, his breath coming in sharp, jagged gasps. The roar died down, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. Then the soft sound of footsteps approached. His mother walked into the kitchen. She didn't shout, and she didn't scold him for the noise. Instead, she moved with a quiet grace that acted like a cool breeze on his heated skin. She knelt down on the floor, her eyes meeting his with understanding rather than anger. Slowly, she pointed toward the corner of the room. Max knew that spot. He walked over with heavy steps and sat down on the soft blue mat. It felt cool and inviting. He crossed his arms tightly against his chest and stared at the white paint of the wall. He began to count. 1. The world slowed down. 2. The tightness in his chest began to loosen. 3. He took a massive, deep breath, feeling his lungs expand to their limit, and then he let the air out in one long, slow whistle. As the breath left him, his shoulders finally dropped away from his ears. The storm had passed. Max looked back at the scattered blocks, but they didn't look like a disaster anymore. They looked like a beginning. He stood up from the blue mat, feeling lighter and taller. He walked back to the center of the kitchen where Leo was still waiting, looking uncertain. Max didn't yell. He didn't stomp. Instead, he simply held out his hand, palm open and steady. Leo looked up, a small smile forming, and placed the final red piece into Max's hand. It felt smooth and familiar. Max knelt down on the rug and carefully clicked the block onto the base, one by one. He reached for the other pieces. He worked with a steady hand, piece by piece, layer by layer. The tower grew taller than it had been before, stronger and more stable. He reached for a small plastic figure and placed it carefully on the very top, like a king on a mountain. Max stood up, looked at his brother, and shared a genuine, bright smile. The kitchen was quiet again, but this time the silence was full of peace.